to you by Blurredography.
I do love Warren High School Folks Club. Can you tell us like some of the differences between voice acting back then versus now?
There's a few big differences now. Oron was recorded way before simultubs were even a twinkle in Funimation's eye, and there's a very different process. There was back then, if you work on the show as a director, or a writer, or an engineer, or an actor, you especially as a writer, you had access to the whole Japanese production beforehand to have an idea of, you know, the sort of shape of the story and the various character arcs and how, you know, where they started versus where they ended. And she had more information to go on, you know, because the show wasn't coming out at the same time as the dub. And and you also, the big change now, I think, and there's several I could cite, the biggest one is the pace at which we work now. Whereas in the old days, you know, we would go by contract to contract. So when a contract for Funimation, usually about 6 episodes for the show. So here's 6 episodes. We're going to record this during this window of a month and a half, 2 months. And you know, if you had 1,000 lines in that 6 episodes, you had 6 weeks to come in to do them over the course of 6 weeks. With the simuldub process, it's now we do 1 episode a week, sometimes less than a week, and so you have to, before you are considered for a role in a simuldub, you have to agree that you will be available for 12 weeks or 16 weeks, however long the contract is, to sort of be on call, because they don't know how often they're going to need you in the booth from week to week until they get the line counts in. They don't get them in until it's almost time to record. So, you know, you might, as an actor, know that you have 100 lines in episode 1, but you might have 2 lines in episode 2, and then 1,000 lines in episode 3. So you just kind of have to clear your schedule and, you know, hope that the hours add up in aggregate in a way that makes it really interesting. It's a very breakneck way to work, and sometimes it's, you know, burnout is real, but it can also be very creative and inspiring because we're sort of, you know, discovering the character along with everyone else. But I guess the major change from my perspective is back in the days of Oron and Black Butler and all that, you know, we had a pretty good idea what was going to be popular in dub as long as we got it right, because the show had been out in some form or fashion for the better part of a year by the time we get it to dub. And so we knew, for example, or had every reason to expect that Oron would be huge. And so they knew kind of how much marketing and money to put into everything. And now it's far more like, well, let's hope. Which is sort of makes it more like traditional filmmaking, where you're just kind of like, well, we think we've got a good thing, we'll see what audiences think about it. That's the big change. That's the big change, is now like kind of not knowing how it's going to do until it's out there, which is sometimes fun, sometimes not so fun. It just sort of depends. Thank you.
To kind of follow up on that, whether it turns out successful or not, you are in 11 of my top 20.
Wow, lucky me.
I'm JB of JB vs. the World, and my question is, like, you've had a long list of characters, all of them vastly different. What do you channel to get to each different one? Because there's no way Irwin is like a Rikichi or like a Scar. Like, what do you do?
Well, that's the illusion, I guess. You know, they are all just different facets of my own personality. I'm a believer in, I think, just in life, that you are what the situation makes you. You know, that you are, you know, you either rise to a situation. I mean, who knows what Erwin is like in his private life? Maybe he's just like Rikichi. But when he has to command a bunch of soldiers to go into battle, he's got to channel the sort of personality and the voice and the energy that will get those people moving. Whereas Rikichi doesn't have to worry about that so much, so he can be a little more vulnerable on day-to-day basis. So it's not so much that I am thinking about how different characters are. To me, they're all just me. They're different facets of my own personality that are brought out by the particular story that person is in. For me, I think a character is about, they are who they are because of the pressures that the story is putting on them to be that person. And so it's a function of the environment they're in, and if I'm just as an actor keyed into what that environment is, the voice just comes out. I don't craft anything, if that makes sense. I just respond to the circumstances. Like my teacher always says, I have an acting guru, Steven Anderson, who's my favorite teacher of all time, and I've had many, and he says you can't play emotion, but you can play circumstance. And that's what you do. You can't fake being sad, but you can let the circumstances, the tragic circumstances your character is in, really affect you if you believe in them. And that's kind of what happens. So I suppose my range is just a function of me being very open to whatever the situation is I'm supposed to be in. And if I'm keyed into that, the character just comes out naturally. Does that make sense?
That does. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, how you doing? I'm
Good.
Mark from Blurredography. My question to you is, when voice acting for, say, animation or film and then video games, is there a difference in how you approach voice acting for film and animation versus video games?
There's some overlap, but there are differences. The key difference when, say, doing anime is that it's all dubbed. And so one of the things we have to be aware of is timing. The animation is in stone. We cannot change that. And of course the big challenge is, I'm feeling it, I want to say the line this way, and it may come out, but it may not work with the animation, it may not work with the timing that you have to fit the mouth movements, what we call flaps. And so you have to adjust. I think being an actor in a dub is more akin to being an ensemble musician, where you have to play expressively and hit the right notes, but you also have to be aware of the rhythm and the timing so as not to screw up everyone else in the ensemble. You can't be too individualistic. On the flip side of that is prelay stuff, like for video games or film or prelay animation here in the States. The difference is that you're given this freedom where you go into the booth and record. You might not even know what the character is supposed to look like. That may still be in development while the scripts are being written. So sometimes you have some storyboards to work with, often not even that. And for video games, it's rare that you even see the other dialogue around what you're saying. It's just a spreadsheet of lines that your character is saying, because it works differently in a video game because they're recording multiple possibilities. So you're doing every scene different ways. And the director and the lore master, if there's a lore master, there often is, and the writer have to kind of tell you this is what's going on.
A pleasure to meet you, Vault Hunter. I am Sir Hammerlock.
And here's what you say if the player says this. Here's what you say if the player instead says this. So you're recording all these kind of probabilities. It makes it very interesting, but you're also not having to match specific timings, so you have a little more freedom. And that can be very disorienting if you're used to having the framework of a dub to work in. I did dubs before I did video games, and so video games were a bit of a mystery to me because I had to go in and be like, I could just say whatever, there's no animation to match yet. I just say the lines like I'm performing it on stage, but by myself, okay. And I loved it, and I hated it at the same time because I like the structure of dubbing. That's kind of what I was comfortable with. And that's the major difference, though. It's just the freedom versus the restriction. And they both come with a trade-off, I suppose. But yeah, does that make sense? Cool. Thank you.
How you doing?
Hello.
Do you have a favorite line from any of the characters that you've ever done? Something that kind of sticks with you.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that sticks with me. I hesitate to say my favorite line, but I think the one that in recent memory that had the most impact is Commander Irwin's final speech. It's just a beautifully written speech. Aaron Dismuke, who adapted those scripts, it was just, sublime. And it was a great moment. I didn't know at the time it would have the impact it did. I know it hit me in the feels, and and it was really gratifying, very validating, in fact, to see people react to it and say, "Oh, Captain, my captain," kind of thing. And I didn't know. If you told me at the time I was recording it and crying like a 4-year-old, that people would, that like bodybuilders would be coming up to my tail and I listen to this when I'm deadlifting, and I'd be like, wow, you do realize that means you're about to die. But yeah, that last scene of Erwin's actually has had such an impact on me as an actor and has connected me so much to that character in my own mind that I cannot bring myself to watch the show anymore after he died. And that's not because I'm salty about not getting work. It's just that I feel weird. I can't in good conscience know what he didn't get the chance to know. So as far as I'm concerned, I never made it to the basement either. And one day when I'm done grieving, I will watch the rest of the show because I understand it's pretty baller, but not ready yet. Not ready yet. No, thank you.
So I have had the wonderful experience of working with someone in the same field as myself. I looked at Mr. McKinney's line of work. I looked at your line of work. They are so huge, so there has to have been some crossover. Do you ever get to talk about your work or geek out or be, a fan of each other's work?
Oh, all the time. We're a married couple, so we get the same auditions. We'll frequently ask each other's advice, like, can I get you to hear this read and see what you think? And I'll be like, try this, and he'll do the same thing for me. We've gotten to be in shows together, of course, over the years, and that's always super fun because I love hearing him perform, and it's always I'm a big Meisner actor, which means I'm very outward directed, and my performance comes a lot from the person I'm acting off of. That's just kind of a staple of Meisner technique. And so whenever I'm in a show with Brandon and I get to work off of him, I know it's gonna get good work out of me because his performances are always so great and it's just so beautiful to listen to. But yeah, we totally nerd out for our stuff. I mean, we're both in Fire Emblem together. How cool is that?
What a beautiful ring. And you're giving it to me?
Yes. It would make me happy for you to have it.
Thank you, Louis.
And then I'm not much of a gamer, but I do like to watch him play it, and he'll play it, I'm like, oh, baby, you sound so good. He's like, you're such a tank. Yeah, it's super fun. It's super fun. And of course, we have friends in the business too that we've known for years that we either know because we worked with them or we've known the con circuit. And a great example that I'm very happy about recently is the wonderful actor and teacher Richard Horowitz, who has been an inspiration for me for years. And I've known him for quite a long time and think he's delightful, but we've never worked together before. Our paths never crossed in studio. But we're now both in the new Star Wars game together, and we share many of our scenes together, and that's a highlight of my career. Like, finally, after all these years, I get to work with Richard Horowitz. That was super fun. But oh yeah, we're total nerds for what we do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I totally get the PR while listening to Erwin's speech before.
I love hearing that so much.
That was totally good. So what is a dream character that you wish an upcoming character or a past character that you wish you could have voiced?
Oh,
If you got a short list, that's cool too.
I don't want to be coy, but let's just say there's a dream role that I got, and it'll be coming out later this year, and I'm very, very excited about that, and that's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hello.
Let me start by saying that I have very little idea of what you look like, and that beard looks amazing on you.
Why, thank you. Thank
Welcome.
you.
I'm Brian from the Explanation Point YouTube channel. I am very interested in adaptation and translation. And what I'd like to know is, do you, or did you, back before the days of simul-dubs, ever look at a Japanese voice actor's performance for inspiration or different ways of doing delivery?
Yeah.
And are there any good examples?
All the time. When there's so many examples, but the one that springs to mind immediately is the Seiyu in Steins Gate, whose name at the moment escapes me. Forgive me. It's Sunday at a con, and I'm like, it's that guy. But I got to work on the adaptation with Patrick Seitz, the scripts, and so of course I was very familiar with his performance because I was writing the adaptations to it. And then of course in the booth we always preview what we're looking at to kind of match the energy and to kind of see tonally what's going on in the scene. And even if you don't speak Japanese, and I don't really, I have a little bit, but not enough to be, a translator by any means. I'm not as proficient as my husband, but good acting is good acting, and it comes through regardless of the language barrier, I think. And watching that performance just reduced me to tears every time. And really kind of put me in my head performing, because I'm like, how am I going to match this guy? How on earth can I possibly do that? But in a weird way, that challenge really, I think, helped me perform, because it gave me something to work against and through. But yeah, I'm frequently, especially a character like Okabe, he's so strange, and he's so larger than life in so many ways that it's like, how do you say this line? How would I breathe life into that line without making it sound ridiculous? Because it should be ridiculous, but it also has to come from a real place, because it's not meant to make the audience laugh. It's meant to, give us some insight into how his mind works. And so I'm like, how do I do that without reducing it to a joke? And I would always watch the Seiyu and be like, that's how you do it. So frequently.
Well, you pulled off Okabe, amazing. Thank you.
Well, thank you. The Japanese was a huge help.
How's it going?
Good. How you doing?
Thank you so much for what you do. I really appreciate it. So my question for you, my name is Blaine, by the way, I'm with Complete Authority. So my question is, what was your experience on Attack on Titans? I don't know if anybody asked that question. I kind of didn't know.
I have so many stories from Attack on Titan. So let me kind of paint a picture for you, if you like. I got to work on the first 2 seasons as the lead adaptive writer. So I read ahead in the manga, which of course the show follows pretty religiously. At least it had up until the seasons when I stopped watching it.
Love-hate relationship, I understand.
What's that?
Love-hate relationship, I understand.
Well, it's one of those things where, I wrote the first, or helped write the first 2 seasons, the adaptations, and then Aaron Dismuke took over for season 3 and is still the lead writer for it, if I understand correctly. And but I loved working on it. I loved coming in every day, and not every day, but every time I had to come in to record Commander Irwin was always a great experience, because I love working with Mark McFarlane, who's one of my dearest friends, the dub director. He also plays Jean Kirstein in the dub, beautifully, I might add. And every time I would come in, Mike is very military when he directs it. He kind of takes on the persona necessary for the show he's directing. So for Attack on Titan, he's a little like Commander Irwin when he's directing me, which is perfect, I think. But I don't often read ahead or do much research into the roles I'm playing, because I want to be surprised. I want my reactions to be genuine. So I don't like I don't like going and knowing what's happening, because I think it I don't know, it gets in the way. I get in my head about it. So if I let myself be surprised, I think my performance tends to be much more organic. But of course I knew that Commander Irwin was going to die. I'd read ahead when I was the writer, and I knew it was coming in season 3. I didn't know when. I just knew that every day that I was coming in the booth might be the last. And in retrospect, it was kind of the perfect state of mind to be in, to play him in that season, because that's got to be on every soldier's mind. Is today the day? Is today the day I die? It's probably going to be it, and at one point it's going to be that day. So every session I'd go in, and it's funny, you have to picture Mike McFarlane, who is not a very effusive director. He's not like, oh, that was beautiful, perfect. He's more like, good, moving on. That's, again, very Commander Irwin. There's not a lot of, the excellence is not rewarded, it's expected. And it's kind of perfect in that way, I think, for Attack on Titan. But again, he's a lovely man, so it's not who he is outside of the booth, just when he's directing that particular show. And I would come in every day and be like, is it today? And he'd be like, get out of your head. No, it's not. Come on, get in the booth. We got work to do. And I'm like, okay. And then the day when it was the day, I walked in, and I was like, hey, and he's like, how you doing today, man? You doing okay? I was like, oh shit. And we previewed it, and I saw it all happen, and I was like, here we go. And so Captain, my captain, and we did it, and then we both had a nice little cry fest, hugged each other, went out for drinks, and that was it. So yeah, but that was one of my favorite experiences in the show in retrospect, of being like, wow, even Mike. And I hadn't performed that character now for 3 years. I guess it's been about 3 years since he died. And I got called in. Oh my God! I got called in by my agent. We're like, hey, Crunchyroll wants you to come in to do some Attack on Titan. I was like, yeah. And I don't want to spoil it for anyone who's watched it, but I can't not spoil it I can't tell the story without spoiling it. So forgive me. Pre-warning to anyone that's listening. Hanji is my favorite character from the show. I love Hanji. I loved writing Hanji when I was writing it. I loved watching Jessica Cabello's performance as Hanji. I think Hanji is one of my favorite characters in anything I've ever seen. I just love him. And I always thought Hanji would make it. I always just thought Hanji would make it. I just thought Hanji will make it to the end. And when I got called in, I was like, I made some joke with Mike. I was like, is Commander Garwood coming back as a Force Ghost? What's going on? And Mike was in a state. And I was like, shit, what now? And he showed me that, Hanji was on the other side and having this vision of, Commander Owen being like, yo. And it was just this beautiful moment. And I just... Like, you have to picture, like, Mike is in the Zoom call with his engineer, and I'm in LA with my engineer, we're recording it remotely because I live in LA now. And so that's a big change from when the last time I did Erwin versus now. And I was like coming back for this, and Mike was like, yeah, so this is gonna be pretty rough. And I'm like, oh shit. And he showed me this. I'm like, yeah, this is gonna be real rough. And then, and there it is. And Jessica wasn't even recorded yet, but I know that performance so well that I could hear her in my head, and I was just having to be strong, to be like, hey, welcome. let's talk about how much it sucks being the commander, And it's a beautiful little scene, and when we were done, Mike was like, yeah, good job. Both of our engineers were in tears for one line. It's one line.
It is.
It's not, but it's just the way it just stabs you right through the heart. And that working on that show was just filled with moments like that. And as much of an emotional roller coaster as it is, like, what a gift as an actor to have that kind of connection to a property that you can walk in and be like, man, I am not the same person as when I woke up this morning because I said this line in this situation. It's crazy. It's crazy, man. But yeah, I hope that answered your question. I'm not even sure.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
You've had so much practice caring for your family that I'd feel lucky for you to care for me. That's why I have a matching gift for you, if you'll take it. It's the pact ring.
You're too kind.